I am on a personal mission to beat the game Pokemon Yellow in a solo challenge once per week every week using another entry from the 151 Pokemon in the Pokedex for Pokemon Yellow. And today we are continuing that little tradition and we are looking at the Pokemon Vulpix. This is something that I've been looking forward to for a hot minute here, haha. And the main reason is not because I'm like necessarily a big Vulpix fan. In fact, I honestly don't believe I ever once had a Vulpix on my team while playing any of the Pokemon games in my early days. And a lot of that came down to the fact that I was 100% a kid who was picking Charmander every time. I already had a Pokemon that was a fire type, didn't need another one. Although I do think Vulpix is an incredible design, I actually particularly like the sort of watercolored specific original artwork before it sort of got into the anime and got a little bit cuter. Not that this version is not cute, but like it has a very realistic, like true to life form, I feel like, in the artwork that you see on the left hand side. I'm just a big fan of the way that these original art pieces were designed for a lot of these Pokemon, and some of them I feel like we've gotten too far away from them. Nidoking, for example, huge downgrade, unfortunately. But anyway, we'll get there some other day. Speaking of a downgrade or an upgrade, I do love the back sprite for Vulpix. In this game, his little like pompadour hairstyle that's happening, I'm loving every second of it. The beady little eye. It's incredible. But I digress, and I need to get back on target with what I was saying, which is that I am excited to do this video. And the reason for that is that I think that overall, if I had to pick a favorite Pokemon type, it would definitely be fire types. Maybe that makes me a little bit basic. I feel like a lot of types of TV shows and everything like that, when there's elements and everything like that built in, a lot of the times fire typically is like the leader and like the main guy. He's always wearing red, blah blah blah. And of course I am a big fan of red from Pokemon. But the thing is that we've seen a lot of poison, we've seen a lot of bug, we've seen a lot of flying, we've just seen a lot of stuff, and normal of course as well, but we've just seen quite a few repeats. And it's been a minute since we've seen fire types. Fire has not happened since Charmander, near the beginning of this whole project. So I'm just really excited to get back into one of my favorite typings of all time and to take a look at what makes this Pokemon a little bit different from Charmander, my son. But that is also, I think, going to be a very interesting tale because of the fact that there are not a crazy amount of moves at our disposal. And while we do have Dig, which is something that obviously every time we see that Dig is available for a Pokemon, it's kind of an instant no-brainer. We're taking that move and we're using it as often as possible. It really is kind of an OP move in Gen 1. And it's especially for solo challenges, I feel like it's great. If you're trying to solo challenge and speedrun, I could totally see why Dig would not be a great move, just because it takes 2 turns each time. But really, Dig is just so effective against basically everything that we go up against. Now, the biggest issue that we've got is that there are some limitations in some of these moves. We don't have anything like Slash, which is fine because we, really aren't huge with the critical hits necessarily in this game anyway. And, again, looking at the rest of the moves, it's pretty much just normal and fire. Obviously, as always, we can teach Toxic, but we're never going to use Toxic. We can learn Rest, which could have potentially been a good move for certain parts of the game, but I also feel like, just like the fact that Dig takes more than one turn, Rest takes multiple turns to kind of get out of. It just doesn't really feel beneficial. So we are taking a look at mostly just normal types and fire type moves, and again, Dig. Now, that is going to get us pretty far in this game. Honestly, it's going to mean, I would argue, a pretty good start time. I would argue, honestly, a pretty great time for a majority of this. I think that maybe part of that is just my familiarity with the type, and there's a little bit of that sort of Charmander knowledge that can be applicable in this situation, but I think there's other things that will sort of come into play here. And I think we're going to see a lot of differences to some extent, especially in the end game for these two Pokemon. Now, we've talked a lot about this Pokemon, and there's probably one other thing that I will mention about the moves, which is that since there is a very limited number of things that we have, Body Slam will come into play as always, and it will stay with us for the majority of the game. I mean, honestly, until the very end. Now, we are, of course, today going to go up against the rival for a second time. I do think that the Jolteon team is the team to go up against. Flareon could have potentially been a fine enough team to go up against. We definitely don't want to go up against Vaporeon. I think that that is maybe kind of a easy said sort of situation. Although, I don't know, maybe there's something to be said about the fact that Vaporeon might be easier than Cloyster. Who's really to tell? But either way, we've made the decision and we are going to stick with it. And we are now on our way to the very first gym battle. And I feel like level 12 does feel potentially a little low, maybe for some people. I do think that, sort of going off of a joke that I made previously with Charmander, obviously we all know that rock and ground types are not weak to fire types. But for whatever reason, when they're at a very low level, it really, the resistance that they have to fire type moves does not seem nearly as strong. And so Ember is the kind of move that feels like we're going to be able to move through this team pretty quickly no matter what anyway. So that's what we're going for. And now that we have made our way through the first trainer, or the only trainer in the gym, we are able to immediately move on to this team. And honestly, Ember shows that it is a pretty solid move. We make it through losing only 6 HP, also getting an early burn off, which is actually great just because it means that he has to waste a move to use a full heal and then he's not attacking. So that is pretty key for us. We beat Brock. I mean, honestly, maybe one of the easiest fights that we've ever had in this game so far, which just feels a little wild to me. But it just goes to show that in the early game, Ember is actually still a pretty great move. And I do think that that is kind of showcased here by the fact that we're cutting ahead to one of the typical cuts for me here, which is just to the last level of the map for Mount Moon. And at this point, I have fought every single person in this cave. And I feel like with a lot of Pokemon, that's not necessarily something that I need to do. With Vulpix, there is, I think, a good reason to fight everyone at the very least early game. With Clefairy, we definitely, I think, did more battles than we actually needed. And a little bit of that was just sort of unfamiliarity. I was obviously familiar with the game for Rattata, but Clefairy was not a Pokemon that I really used a lot, so I wasn't really sure what that power level is really going to end up being like. And to some extent, Vulpix, I feel the same way about, right? But knowing what Charmander's hangups were made me kind of say, even if they're not the same Pokemon, even if there are definitely some major differences, there is, I think, a reason to try to learn from some of the, not necessarily mistakes, but some of the hangups that prior Pokemon had. And so I try my best to get a lot of early game leveling in, just because I think it's going to become very relevant specifically to the end game, and honestly a little bit with Misty as well, just because when you really break it down, Misty is very difficult for a fire type Pokemon when it's the only thing that you can use. Early game, obviously, Brock probably could put up a larger fight if he had rock-type moves, but he doesn't. He just has tackle and bite and screech, you know? So therefore, it's kind of easy for a fire Pokemon, something that isn't particularly strong against him, to then excel. But then once you get to Misty, where she's using super effective moves and she is frequently boosting up her defense, it is very difficult to break through her particular line of defense for the Pokemon that are weak against her. Obviously, if you come in here with a grass type, come in here with an electric, it's going to be quick and painless. But in this particular type of situation, for a Pokemon like Vulpix, yeah, you're gonna need that little advantage. Whatever you can take to potentially outspeed, or at least to have a move that maybe the special can then surpass the defense going up because it won't be relevant, right? So we're gonna need to be able to make sure, it's a mouthful. We need to be able to make sure that Ember, if we are going to use that move, can hit for as much as it possibly can, which won't be a lot since it'll be resisted, but at the very least we've got Stab, same type attack bonus. So there are some options, but obviously we could also wait until we get the move Dig. Dig will also be pretty helpful, although again, once she starts boosting up her defense, it's going to get harder again. If we can wait until we have a move like Body Slam, as we have seen in other videos, where, for example, for the Nidorans, where we needed that move desperately in order to move past her, you know, there are some options. There are some things that open up. And while I am not a speedrunner, and I'm not necessarily trying to speedrun the game, I am at least trying to get somewhat interesting times. My personal best times is usually how I sort of describe that as. And I think that with a Pokemon like Vulpix, surely we can do better than the Nidoran family. I feel like as a fire, I don't know, not trainer, but just an enthusiast, I feel like I can get a Pokemon type that I like across the finish line in a reasonable time. So let's try and make that happen for this little Vulpix right here. Now that we've made it across the Nugget Bridge, we are going to fast forward past the part where I fight every trainer on the way to Bill, and then we will sort of see where we end up and the decisions that we make after this. So, next up is the thieving Rocket member who has the move Dig that he has stolen. We're going to go ahead and defeat him, I would say pretty quickly, but unfortunately we do get put to sleep and it gets a little dangerous, gets a little close. And I did not save before that battle, so I'm really glad that we did, in fact, win it. We get the move Dig, and we are going to immediately teach it to Vulpix, and there it will remain until the end of the video. Congratulations, you now know a piece of the puzzle. Now we're going to go heal up, and I'm thinking that we can do this without needing to go to the SS Anne. I think there's a way to do it. We just have to find that pathing. So first and foremost, we're going to fight all of the trainers here because, again, we need that experience. We need any little advantage that we can get. Horsey only knows Bubble, so not too hard to take that one out. This one's a fun little exchange because it's going to automatically use the water type move that it has since it quote-unquote is super effective. But Withdraw only boosts the defense. So just take us longer and longer to chip away at it, but eventually we do it. Great. Now we're moving on to the junior trainer. This Goldeen can be pretty tough. It does not have any stab moves, but the supersonic can be really rough, and with Tail Whip, if you then end up hitting yourself, you know, it's pretty devastating. Luckily, we make it through fairly quickly against that Pokemon. I realize I do not have any healing items, which doesn't really make sense anyway, because I should just heal up, make sure I have all the PP available, as if I really also will need that much, because even if I do somehow hit multiple times, I'm not going to run out of PP before they make me run out of HP. Now, we've saved, we're going up against Misty. That took a lot more damage than I was hoping for, and that is exactly what I'm expecting. Bubble Beam is devastating for pretty much any Pokemon, but especially Vulpix. Whew, yikes. Okay, let's go up against her a second time. This time we're trying something a little bit different. Luckily, Dig gets off twice, and we are able to defeat her first Pokemon, but yeah. Can't even finish that statement. Getting us down to 3 HP, it's a dangerous territory right there. And of course, knowing that they could have just used Bubble Beam to begin with instead of Water Gun, you know. Now, this one's lucky. That time... okay, yeah. We got lucky on the first one and then immediately got on the second one. That's frustrating. But I've learned my lesson from Koga in the Nidoran videos. Sometimes, if you've got a couple resets in a row and it seems pretty difficult, sometimes it's like, oh, okay, I'm getting really close. Let me come back. No. Once you see a pattern like this, move on, do something different for a little bit, maybe level up, go grab a new move like Body Slam that you're going to use for forever, add that, and congratulations. Once again, you found another piece of the puzzle, sort of. And then you move on and you fight your rival. This is the sort of thing that's going to give us another leg up the next time that we go back up to this gym, because we'll now be a much higher level. We'll hit harder. The unfortunate thing is that A, you can't use Cut until you defeat Misty, which is smart because then you can't just immediately go fight Surge, get Thunderbolt, and then take Thunderbolt up to her. Yep, smart design. But also, it doesn't even matter. Vulpix can't learn Thunderbolt, so, you know. You think your baby Pikachu could do it? Maybe. But your baby Vulpix against Raichu. I love that guy. Dude, the delivery of those lines in the Pokemon anime series, flawless. Anyway, we have Body Slam to take to this gym this time, and I take a weird gamble there, but it works out. I honestly, that was one where I remember when playing this, I kind of sat there for just a brief second kind of thinking, how did I do that? I didn't actually think Vulpix was going to live through that second attack, but we did it. So I guess I'm just sort of stumbling over nothing at this point. Either way, we do go in. I don't know what I'm trying to do here. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm trying to figure out, looking back at this gameplay, I must have thought I could try and use Dig in any building for a brief moment, even though I've always known that that is not the case. Either way, I guess I was just trying to cut some time going into Vermilion. That was something. I guess that goes to show that, like, a lot of the times I showcase that, oh, I know all these things and I'm very good. But also, even me, I can sometimes have little brain farts. Speaking of farts, let's go fight Surge. Man, that is a great transition. If I may say so myself, flawless execution. Here is his Raichu. Use Thunderbolt. God, incredible. He's awful. Anyway, Vulpix and I are going to move on to the next gym. And move on we do because we go over to Celadon. I don't need to show any of Rock Tunnel because with Dig, we're great on moves. We also now have Flamethrower. We make our way through Erica's gym so quickly with moves like Dig and Flamethrower because Dig is great against poison. And the Flamethrower just one-shots everything on her team. A great and easy, decisive win for this little Firefox, and boy do I love it. And I think it's great because we're now with a better move set here, right? Especially with Body Slam, Dig, Flamethrower especially. Flamethrower is funny to me because I remember growing up, going up against Team Rocket where most of the Pokemon are poison type, though there are obviously some psychic types and a couple other like random little assortments of like normal and everything like that. But really, at the end of the day, I was using Charmander through Charizard mostly, like extensively, not exactly a solo challenge, but pretty close. So that Pokemon was always so strong, and I used to think that Flamethrower was one-shotting everything, which meant that the poison type Pokemon were weak to fire type moves. And it wasn't until Gen 3 when I got older that I finally one day went, wait a minute, why are my fire moves not one-shotting these poison Pokemon? And that was when I found out, oh, it's just because you had a Pokemon that was 20 to 30 levels higher. It's not that fire is better against poison. Silly, silly boy. What also is great is that we are then able to do kind of the same thing. Flamethrower is not super effective against fighting types. Don't worry, I'm in my 30s now, so I know the difference. I know how this works. But what I also recognize works is the fact that I've got a pretty decent special as, Vulpix here. And I'm able to go through this fighting dojo and get some of that beautiful little bean footage and experience points that we need pretty quickly, pretty decisively. It's a word that I like to use these days, actually, decisively. I am decidedly pro-decisively. Either way, we are making our way through here. We're going to get a Pokemon that can use Strength, because I'm not going to teach it, obviously, to my Pokemon. Can't learn it. And also, I don't want to double up. I like having one different HM on each Pokemon. It helps me recognize where I'm going each time. And honestly, the other issue here that we've got is the fact that we're running a little bit behind now. I feel like I should be doing better on my time. So we're going to try and pick up the pace a little bit, going up against the rival, of course, Flamethrower carries. Thank you once again, Flamethrower, my best friend in Pokemon. And then we're going to make our way to the top of the Pokemon Tower. We are going to make our way through all of this nonsense, which is Team Rocket. Bad. Tomatoes, tomatoes, tomatoes. Bad team. Get out of here. We get the Pokeflute, and then we're going to move on, and we're going to immediately cut to Koga. This is going to be a thing of beauty. Watch and behold, after the weeks of the bad times with the Nidorans, watch a flawless victory. I mean, I get poisoned, but I don't take a single point of damage, so feeling pretty good about that one. Okay, next we are going to see a moment where I kind of feel like we're starting to make maybe a little bit of a mistake here, right? I do feel as though I'm running a little bit behind schedule in this game. I feel as though I really felt very confident I could get a very good competitive time with Vulpix, but I start going through places like Silphco, doing the minimum battles. I am fighting only the people that I have to fight in order to move on to the next section, and it is going to unfortunately show, I think, in a little bit here. I do think I should have taken the time to go up against a couple of the other trainers, not necessarily all of them, right? But there were some trainers in this area that offer some pretty good experience pools, and I could have taken advantage of that. I do believe I could have ended this area 2, maybe 3 levels higher than I am going to end up leaving it. And it's going to make a difference, in my opinion. But either way, we make it through the rival very quickly. We make it through, obviously, Team Rocket blasts off at the speed of light for the final time. And now we're going to go up against Giovanni. He does have a harder team, but that does not matter. We only get damaged once. We are in the clear. Now we can move on to the next gym. And move on we do to Sabrina. I fight a few of the trainers along the way, but it's kind of a little bit too little too late. As you can see, one of the biggest issues that we've got is we are speed tying with Kadabra. We do take an accuracy debuff, which could be devastating, especially when Alakazam hits us that hard. Luckily, the X defend is kind of a throw moment. We still hit and we get out. But I feel as though we should be A, outspeeding, and B, we should be hitting for much more damage. It's getting a little bit kind of perilous, I guess we'll say. What's also perilous is Cinnabar Island on the eyes, so as always, we are skipping any of the action there and just immediately going to the Blaine Gym. He has fire type just as I do, but I have the advantage by having Dig, which is super effective, and therefore we can get a very quick and easy win, which is great because Blaine is honestly very difficult. And speaking of difficult, this is another moment that is very perilous because we are going up against one of the teams that has the ability to absolutely wreck my shop. And that is maybe even an understatement. We are not super effective per se. I mean, we're super effective, but we're not hitting super hard just because of the fact that A, our attack is not incredible, and also we don't have stab with the dig move, but we somehow make it through. I think there's a little bit of just the element of sometimes Giovanni just throws the fight. He just throws it. I mean, with all of the guard specs and everything like that, if at any point he had just used Earthquake, game over. Vulpix would have been done instantly. The defense is not there, especially if they use anything like Tail Whip or whatever they used. I already forgot. That did lower to my defense. Never would have stood a chance. Now, we do stand a chance against Rival 6. This is the last time that he'll be the rival before, of course, he becomes the champion at the very end of the game. Spoiler alert, but, you know, the game is 30 years old-ish. So, yeah, by now you should know what's happening. So we go against him here and see, like, that is the kind of thing that I wanted to see against Sabrina, which is a one hit against Kadabra. We need those kind of moves. This is where, again, we see someone throw the battle. Using a potion? Not even a super potion, just a potion feels unbelievable to me at this point in the game. How he becomes a champion is a little bit beyond me. I'll say it. I make my way through Victory Road, literally using every last bit of PP that I had. The very last move took out the last Pokemon for the very last trainer on that little route, so that felt perfectly planned to me, which is perfect. We are now at level 65 going up against the Elite Four. This is unfortunately behind where I wanted to be at this point. I wish I had actually just leveled up to the end of 66 at the very least, because it does feel a little bit like a waste to start using the rare candies, but we are going to use almost all of them here and now because we definitely need it going up against Lorelei. Lorelei has been a wall for Pokemon that aren't even weak to her. And so Vulpix, we're in a very dangerous territory here, going up against a team that is mostly water/ice. Yeah, they're ice, but they all have these special little moves that are definitely very, very good against us. Slowbro is maybe the most devastating. And that's just because there's no ice pairing there to sort of help with the moves that I can use against him. Either way, I come back. This time I use 2 more rare candies and I add Fire Blast to the equation. We'll see if it's helpful really at all. Luckily, we make it through Dugong pretty quickly. That can also typically be maybe one of the harder parts. Cloyster's tough, but not as tough as the champions. Now, we get a very good, fast body slam that paralyzes in against Slowbro. That is super effective and very helpful. Not super effective, but I mean effective for the battle. Unfortunately, yeah, even though we do defeat Jinx decisively, Lapras gets the better of us. That tracks, makes sense. We've seen it before. And I guarantee you, we're going to see it again. Now, this time we are getting very lucky with the fact that we one-tap the first 2 Pokemon. So we are going into the fight against Slowbro with perfect health. And that is a little bit of a throw on her part. Wow. Again, it is so lucky that we got to Lapras with full health, which we definitely needed because otherwise we would have not survived that attack. But we do, so we get to move on to Bruno. Bruno is pretty easy. I'll go ahead and say it. We say it in every episode. Now, granted, he does have 2 rock-type Pokemon that also are ground kind of mixes there. They've got Dig, they've got Earthquake. But luckily, as always, Flamethrower, my tried and true, is able to get through pretty much everything here. Dig is super effective, but it does not defeat that Onix, luckily. He doesn't do anything. we very much could have gotten done in by Earthquake. We don't. Flamethrower takes out Machamp in 2 hits, and Bruno is no more. Up next, we've got Agatha, fan favorite. Agatha's great because she is a very one-sided fight, and that conversation point can really go either way, right? It just depends on the week and who you've got. Luckily for us today, with Vulpix getting here at about 1 hour 45-ish, so still pretty decent time, because we have Dig at our disposal, this is one of those beautiful moments in which we can one-tap every single thing that she has, and we can defeat Agatha in our first try and immediately move on to Lance. Now, Lance is also an interesting case because he's not exactly a one-sided fight, right? But there is an interesting factor here in which that many Pokemon can actually one-shot his entire team, sometimes just through a very good move, or sometimes by having a move like Ice Beam, which we saw last week. And one of the big things here, though, it was an issue for Charmander, though not an issue quite to the level that it will be for Vulpix. And really the main point of it is the fact that he starts with Gyarados. Gyarados is kind of an impossibility, right? Obviously, we can make it past Gyarados, but we are never going to make it past Gyarados with more than half health. We just don't have anything that is super effective against him, and Gyarados is an absolute monster statistically, at least compared to a base Pokemon. And again, a base Pokemon that is weak to what he is. So we're really struggling here. It doesn't really matter how I go about it. It doesn't matter how much I hope that the RNG is going to hit for me. Even with the best RNG that I think I got this entire time, I still don't make it through with more than half health for Vulpix. The fact that all of these attacks that he is doing is constantly leaving me with, I don't know, a third of my health, I guess, somewhere around there. I'm not great with math, I'll be honest with you. But we're getting immediately into the yellow/orange, however you want to talk about that color, and we can't get past him half the time. Because if he doesn't miss, he's always gonna go for the move that's super effective. He's always going to go for Hydro Pump. He's not going to try and leer me. He's not going to try and use Dragon Rage and only do 40 damage. Why would he? He's smart. He's going to go for Hydro Pump every time. And even though it's supposed to be inconsistent, even though the fact of the matter is that the accuracy is supposed to be low enough that it shouldn't hit every time, it always feels like it hits. Obviously it doesn't, but it just feels that way when you go into the fight over and over and over and over and over again. So this is one of those moments where I did not learn from last week with the Koga situation, or even from myself earlier in the video. Because as you can see, I've already added quite a few resets here. And it just continues. I spend about 8 real-time minutes doing this fight over and over and over again. And I don't have really anything else in my pocket that is at my disposal. I'm all out of rare candies. Not that that would necessarily do anything, but of course, every single thing is stacked up against me. It doesn't matter what I tried. That Fire Blast was not going to one-shot Aerodactyl either. So it's time for me to change it up. I decide to black out here. And then I go back out into the wilderness. I train up a little bit more. I go get the final rare candy that I never get, which is over in the power plant. And then I come back and I'm at level 80 now. And as you can see, my first attempt back at Lance, instantly I go down. I'm now 3 levels higher. This now makes me realize that at 2 hours in, it's time. It's time to do the forbidden move, the thing that I try to only use if it means that I can't beat the game without it. I probably could continue to level grind and get Vulpix to a higher level. I mean, okay, there's just moments like that too. That sucks to see. I'll be honest. At level 80, getting one shot by a 58. Yeah, I mean, also, I'll give it to you. It's super effective and it's stab. Of course it's going to do it, but still, it's not great to see. So we then go ahead, we fight Gyarados. This time we beat him. Now we're going into this Dragonair with very little HP, and that is unfortunately dangerous when it knows Bubble Beam. Yep, Misty strikes again. Okay, no problem, man. It's fine. We'll do it again, and hopefully this time we will get there with much more HP. Now granted, it's not looking good, but luckily we get the body slam to get the paralyze, so therefore we can go through. He's missing, he's paralyzing, everything like that. We then make it to the Dragonair that has Ice Beam. Luckily, we hold on with 18 HP. And we now outspeed everything. So we had to use Mimic in order to get Ice Beam, but it happens. I truly do not believe that even at level 80, I do not think Vulpix makes it through without Mimic. This is one of the moments where it feels like it's needed. This team is just designed to be an absolute wall that no fire Pokemon, or at least not a base fire Pokemon, can get past. Okay, I'm admitting defeat to some extent. I mean, I'm obviously still going to do the whole thing. I'm still going to win. It's not necessarily getting the win in the parameters that I would love to see for this little guy. But at the end of the day, the dragon type, specifically the water one, proves to be too strong. And so we get to defeat him eventually using less than desirable mechanics of Mimic. And we're going on to the champion. The first one does not go well. That's a bummer to see, but it's fine. We can bounce back from this. It feels good, though, knowing that we can at least get Sand Slash out with one hit of Flamethrower. That feels kind of incredible. Now, we're also still using Flamethrower against Alakazam. That was definitely a bad choice. I should have just gone with Body Slam or Dig to begin with. We still get the Paralyze, so at least there's that factor. Then we Flamethrower Exeggutor. It's super effective. Great. Then we can Flamethrower Cloyster, and if I had just gotten the burn, that would have been it. We could have done it in one moment. It's fine. We're 20 levels higher. We still don't beat him in one shot. We can survive it, whatever. We then move on to Ninetales, my older brother, my dad, whatever. And we are barely making it through, but we make it through. I am making it through confused. Never mind. Doesn't matter. I get to use Dig. There you have it. 2 hours and 3 minutes, 35 seconds. It is worse than Nidoran, which feels illegal. It feels wrong. Well, at least Nidoran male. But it just feels bad. I don't love that it's 2 hours, 3 minutes. This is another Pokemon to add to my list of you're gonna have to come back and try it again with a better speed and hopefully not have 30 resets. And maybe I can do it without Mimic. I'm really, really holding out for the victory the way that I want it to be. Either way, we still get the victory today, and that's kind of all that matters for this series. So thank you so much for watching Vulpix do his thing. If you've made it this far in the video and you've enjoyed it, please consider giving us a like, a share, a subscribe, anything that has any form of connection and interaction always helps smaller creators like myself. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next week for another solo challenge in Pokemon Yellow.